Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again today. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be able to be here and share all of my thoughts and wisdom with you. I am here to help you master your emotions through self-love and shadow work. My name is Benji, and yeah, let's get going on today's topic. Again, came from someone in my self-love and shadow work group on Facebook. If you're not there, you can find it. Search up self-love and shadow work, Modern Awakenings, and you'll find us there. It'll be a pleasure to have you. So this is someone who has just started reading my book. They've been enjoying it, and here's what she has to say after her little review of the book. I'm trying to concretize a next step, moving from intellectually understanding the nature of our struggle here to consistently coping with the arising of shadow emotions so that I can start to put my focus on what I am actually here to contribute in the world. What is an example of doing the work and feeling the results? Is this all about ritual? How do I create something that works? I know that this will venture into the territory of what you teach in your course, which absolutely, yes, it is. So there is, a limit to what I can say in a video like this, not because I ever try and hold anything back about like it's in my course, so you have to take it to do it. It's that the full answer is dependent on building a whole bunch of tools and a whole bunch of skills. And that's why it's a full course and not just a little bit. But there are some things, absolutely that I can help with right now, and I want to give you some sort of tips and some wisdom. So, um, the first thing is you ask, is this all about ritual? In my opinion, no, it's absolutely not about ritual at all. Um, there are ritualistic things that we can do to help us along the way, and there is, a lot of what we're doing here is this journey towards a more spiritual kind of life where rituals and that kind of thing might take a bit more of a role in our lives. But what we're doing here right now is really just directly with the emotional body. We're dealing with things at the emotional level directly. And this is the thing that a lot of people miss. That we start this inner healing journey often because we're going through a spiritual awakening. But we get those two things very much confused, the emotional healing and the spiritual awakening. They're absolutely intrinsically connected, and they both kind of happen at the same time. And we do the emotional healing, yes, because we're having a spiritual awakening, because it's pushing, like, in order to get to the other side of this spiritual awakening, in order to settle into this more awakened version of reality that we are trying to move to, we need to do the emotional healing. Because those emotional wounds are the sort of heavy energy that is preventing us from accessing that higher consciousness, that higher perspective of the world, of truly living in this 5D mentality and not just knowing it. So there's the intellectual side of things, which is where you kind of started, and you say that like the book has helped you with that, and you're starting to develop a bit more of an intellectual understanding, and then you're aware of the spiritual side that you're trying to get to on the other end. And the thing is that right in between those two is the emotional world. It's its own thing right in between. And so the emotional world is the bridge that we need to connect to and access and master so that we can move from this intellectual side of us to the more spiritual side. So it's intellectuality and emotions and then spirituality. And we're moving from the beginning of that stage. Like the asleep stage, that's all intellectual. That's when we are, even though we're controlled by emotions when we're living in that stage, we believe that, it's all rationality, it's all logic. We believe that we're just operating in this very straightforward way. Um, and like I said, on the other side of that is the spirituality, and we're trying to get there. And the thing is that this, the way that we connect with spirituality is through our emotions. It's through feeling. Your higher self or the universe or whatever, it doesn't tend to speak to you in terms of language, in terms of your actual thoughts. It's about the feeling that you have. And, being truly awakened spiritually is a feeling. It's not necessarily the intellectual knowing. The intellectual knowing is the starting point. This is where, like, when you first have these realizations that, like, oh, right, maybe reality isn't what I think it is, maybe society isn't what I think it is, maybe my patterns aren't what I think they are. That's the intellectual awakening. And that's the starting point of your journey. See, a lot of people think that awakening is the end. That, like, oh, I've been playing this whole human game this whole time, and now that I've awakened, oh, I finally reached the next stage. But really, the awakening it's the starting line of that race. It's that, like, now that you've had your awakening, now you can start actually working on it. Now you can start actually developing the skills and developing the tools. So we're trying to get to that spiritual side, and the way that we do that is through our feelings, through our emotions. We need to get used to not needing to understand everything, not needing to justify everything in this intellectual sort of way. We need to learn how to connect to the part of us that doesn't operate with language, that doesn't operate intellectually and logically and rationally, because though we try to justify it and defend it, and though we believe that, that rationality is our best guide in our lives, we're trying to do everything in this 3D way, your heart and your feelings are actually telling you a lot more than your brain knows. And what so much of this is about is learning how to feel again. We've spent so much of our lives building up these walls around our pain and pushing this stuff away that we don't know how to feel. So, your overall question is what kind of practical thing you can start doing or start trying to put into place to, let me just see your wording again, to consistently coping with the arising of shadow emotions so that I can start to put my focus on what I'm actually here to contribute. So what we need to understand about the practical lens here, like what we need to do on the practical side, is so many people focus on trying to stop thinking. For example, when it comes to meditation, for one thing, people are trying to quiet their mind, which, when framed like that, is never really going to work. You can't stop thinking. You can't quiet your mind. What you can do is learn how to focus your attention on something that is different. So we're used to focusing on our thoughts, focusing on the rationality, focusing on the 3D world. We can't just stop focusing on that. What we can do is move our energy and move our attention and move our focus. So instead of trying to think of, I want to stop thinking, think of what can I start doing? And the simple answer there is we need to start feeling. We need to practice feeling. So that is, I think, the shortest answer of what can you start implementing right now in order to take this next practical step. We have to get used to this practice. I think I just said that word, but get used to this practice of connecting to our emotions and to the sensations of our body again. And like I said, there's a big difference between actively focusing on something that might be non-cognitive, non-language based, versus actively trying to not think about something that is language based. It's like there's an old classic example of, like, if I were to tell you, don't think of a pink elephant, now a pink elephant has popped into your head, whereas a moment ago it wasn't. So the more that we try and tell ourselves, like, I want to stop thinking or I want to stop these old patterns, that it's a stop. It's a halting point. Like, your brain doesn't know where to go then. Like, okay, well, so you want me to stop it, but your brain has to keep moving. There's no way for it to just stop in place. It has to keep moving forward one way or another. So instead of actively focusing on trying to stop doing something, we want to actively start focusing on doing something. And that doing something is going to be actively learning how to feel, to connect with ourselves and what's going on. So, um, one suggestion that I give in my course and that I give in my second book, the 10 Mind Hacks book, and it's kind of split into two, but um, there's the what I like to call the 4 words that will transform your life. This is what you can start putting into practice right away. And the 4 words are, how do I feel? If you can program yourself as much as possible to ask yourself that question over and over and over and over throughout the course of your day, and every time you ask that question, to go through a little checklist in your head. Check your breathing, check your posture, check your heart rate, and check your emotions. Just for a moment, shift your attention to each one of those things, because those are things that, like, they can be put into words once you notice them, but you first have to stop and notice them. So what you're doing is, by asking this question and by doing that quick checklist of each of those things, you're practicing connecting to a knowing that is not cognitive. You know, if your heart is beating really fast in the moment, you're going to be able to feel that and sense that, and then your brain puts that into words. But first, you have to feel it. So these 4 words are just about practicing connecting to the non-cognitive parts of ourselves so that we can build that muscle. Because as we build that muscle, that's when, the things from our past are going to be able to start revealing themselves to us. And we need to also practice being connected to this stuff, because your body gives you answers much more quickly than your mind. If you want to stop negative behavior patterns, then we need to be able to identify them based on a feeling well before they get up to the brain. Because if we're always waiting for us to notice our kind of like cognitively our negative responses, that's always only going to happen after we've responded to something. We're only going to notice our negative responses once we acted on it, once we said something about it. But when we can learn to truly feel this thing first, then we can stop these issues more quickly in their tracks, and we can start turning our attention to the only real problem that is going on there, the feeling. The thing that we're thinking about was not really the problem. Only the feeling that happened was the problem. So this is the practice that I think you can start right away, just to develop this habit of asking yourself, how do I feel? And whenever you ask yourself that question, do that checklist. Heart rate, posture, breathing, and emotions. Just go through each one and spend 30 seconds to a minute just identifying where you're at with all of those things. And if your posture is a little off, then fix it up. If your heart rate is going very fast, take a minute and breathe. If your breathing is very shallow, take a deep breath. And if your emotions are anything but pleasant, just notice them. That's it. You don't need to judge them. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to try and solve the problem right then and there. Learning how to deal with that emotional discomfort, that's small, like that's a part of what we learn in the course, along with all these other things. But you don't, especially for now, while you're just learning how to build this muscle and get going, you don't need to do anything more. You don't need to try and fix it or try and solve it or try and understand it. You just need to practice feeling it. And the more that you can learn how to feel an uncomfortable emotion without needing to understand it, without needing to paint a new picture around it, the more comfortable you're going to become with confronting uncomfortable emotions, which is going to give you the skills and the tools that you're going to need as you start unraveling all of the fear-based patterns that you've built up this whole time. So for now, how do I feel? That's what you can start implementing right away. All right. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Keep in mind that this is all stuff that I teach in the course and in the books. If you're just getting going, then I recommend you check out my first book, which is Feelings First Shadow Work. You can get it on Amazon, or you can check it out in the links below. Or as I was saying, there's that second book, 10 Mind Hacks for Quicker Emotional Healing, where I give a lot of these more practical tips and tools of just little things, simple things that you can put into place right now to accelerate your healing a little bit. In that book, I also give, I think one of my favorite parts of the book is chapter 10, where I give a very unique and very in-depth explanation of manifesting and the law of attraction that is completely different from anything that you've heard so far, and will finally give you a real understanding of how the law of attraction actually works at the psychological level, at the spiritual level, and at the practical level, so that you can actually start making use of this, not just in this, hippy dippy kind of happy way of like, ooh, the universe is always working for me and I'm just gonna, kind of pray and tap into the vortex and wait for everything to show up, but for you to finally understand, like, oh, this is what's actually happening at the metaphysical level when I do this. So now you can put it into place a little bit more. All right. So you can get that also on Amazon or again at the links below. If you're not in the Facebook group, come join us there. Again, in the links below. If this video helped you at all, please make sure to click the like button and hit subscribe. I'm going to be focusing a little more on my YouTube and on my videos moving forward, so it would really help me start building some momentum for the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Love you guys, and have a great day.